All right, let's see how that goes. Good morning, everyone. Rich Ross, uh, in trying out the home studio. Where are we? We're Tuesday morning, February 6th, and we're going to try this out in a different location. So I heard music here. I don't think that music came out across where you all are. I'm still trying to check the audio and make sure that I'm hearing as the stream kind of waits and buffers. As we often try new things here, this is something that's a little different and something that I've been wanting to do, at least get some of the stuff going at home. So machine rig is a little different. It's just the one uh, laptop studio that I use daily. And see. I'm still not hearing anything. Let me see if this is muted over here. All right, that's one that can go away. Oh, it's blasting out the Bluetooth. Let's do this. How's that? Is that any better? Wanting to do at least get some of the stuff going at home. Yep. So that's better. All right, I can mute that there. It's so much nicer when you have someone joining you in the studio and you can do this together. Speaking of which, it's I want to make sure we kick off on time. So we're going to start around quarter up. Chris will be joining me this morning. He's got a quick call he's got to do this morning, and then we'll get going into continuing the conversation around our dev containers and getting the TagzApp into dev container. But I think once Chris gets here, we'll kind of catch up with him because I'll be honest, Chris and I have not, I think over, no, we may not we've communicated because we're always back and forth on Discord with each other, but I don't know that we've been on a call since the calendar turned to a new year here. So this will be fun having him join us and be able to continue this dev container conversation. Um, One of the things I can do while we're waiting is, let's see, I did have, let's see if I can find a good link here because there were a few that I was kind of checking out um, over the last day or so that I thought might be nice. That's that new. And I would have had a few more minutes to kind of get that going. Um, but getting getting this up and running has kind of taken my focus. So one thing I will say, and let me see if I can do it this way. Let's bring up our let's just bring up an instance of VS Code, and I'm going to bring that over to the big monitor here so that we can all see it once I share. Present, share content. Good. Screen. Second screen. And that should be our, yes, that's it. And it's kicked me into the right viewing window. Um, so this I thought was really awesome. It's a something that we had in Visual Studio for a long time and did not until recently. Okay, up until recently did not have this available in Visual Studio Code, but that's the ability to essentially a rip out a tabbed window. So with that, I'm gonna basically take this out and see what's gonna drop it in the editor. Let me see if I can do it this way. So if I do pin that to one side, that's fine. I don't need anything. We can actually lower that. Okay, so we can see that I can take essentially any file here and rip it out of Visual Studio Code. So now it's its own window. We've had this with Visual Studio for a while, and this is awesome to see this here because sometimes you just want to, as you get into all of these various tabs, and especially if you start doing some of the things when it comes to moving it into a new window, well, it did a new window. Or if we did, kind of the split view, having those kind of capabilities here, your screen gets smaller and smaller. And this gives us the chance to essentially rip it out, make it full screen, focus on our code, and kind of get some really cool stuff done. So with that, I think if I right click, I can, nope, that's the splits. There should be a way to turn this back to home, right? Show open editors, closed all, close save. Nope. So I'm just going to do it this way. Let's shrink it back down, and then let's drag and drop this guy back in into here. So now it moves back in here. So rippable tabs, great feature. Go check that out in Visual Studio Code if you've not seen that yet. So again, like to start off with a bit of a tip, just to kind of get things off and going, get my brain going. I'm still working on the coffee. I'm only a couple sips in. But if you're watching and joining us live, love to know where you're watching from. Drop a note in the chat. Let us know where you're from. If you're new to the show, say hi. We'd love to have you continue to join us here as we stream mostly in the mornings, although there's been some talk as we get past some of the winter months and into spring that maybe we might do a night show again once a week or something like that. I don't know. We're still talking. Love to hear your feedback. Is this working for you? Do you miss us in the evenings when we used to do it Wednesday evenings? Love to get your comments around this. Okay. All right. So I am still waiting for Chris to get on board, which should be any minute. I'm also, I think, fighting a bit of the sniffles here, so this will be a fun week regardless. But one of the things I want to do here is I need to get, while I'm waiting for Chris, I need to get, not this one, no, that's in the wrong space. Cool. All right. Let's see. All right, I'm just going to do this here. I apologize for doing this off screen, but I'm not sure how public this is, so I'm just going to come in over here and grab it and let's see, sorry, repositories. There we go. That's all we want. And I'm going to fork this into my repo, which I need to sign in on, which is why I'm doing this over here. And I'm probably going to get, yep, MFA'd. So go to my phone. Yep, sign in request. Approve. Yes, all that is good. Okay. So that's that. If I do this, you know what? This is, I can do this. Let's just rip this out. So much like I showed the ripping out feature on VS Code, I love the ripping out feature on all my applications, including especially Edge. So having the ability to take my page and rip this out. So all I'm doing is I'm taking a fresh cut of TagzApp, which is the app that we're trying to put inside of our container. And to keep it open down here so I can see when Chris joins us. That one. Interesting. Not sure why that's the case. Okay. So in here, this is essentially, it's a public repo he has that they've been working on Jeff's stream over at C# Fritz on YouTube and Twitch. But this application here, this is where he's been making a lot of his updates. So in here, I want to basically do a fork of this one. See if it makes a difference if I do that. So I'm going to fork, and I could do an organization. Copy the main branch only. I don't want to do that. I want all the branches. I'm kind of greedy that way. So we're going to choose an owner. I'm going to make it into a fork already exists. Well, that's not entirely true. Let's see if that makes a difference. That doesn't make a difference. We did not fork from here. We actually forked from the other location, which was over on Fritz and Friends. Hmm. I know Chris probably has a way to do this with rebasing and making those changes that way. Let's see. Well, let's see. The one that we're currently working on, the one that I've been playing around with. Let's bring this up. Okay. So this is the TagzApp that I was playing around with and we've been working on before this. Um, I do want to get the latest version of this, but this is um, uh, get remote, get URL origin. Huh. I did do that from there. All right. Think. So I don't know. Well, let's see if we can do that while we're waiting for Chris. So if I go into, that wasn't my repo. I'm signed in as me. Let's go into my repositories. Let's go to TagzApp, which I forked from Tag. Yeah, that's interesting. It's up to date with that one. How do I sync? It's not behind. I don't know who commits. This branch is not ahead of the upstream. Okay. I don't see. Hmm. What I'm trying to do is I want to, this one, unless I'm wrong, though he does say that this is updated to .NET RTM. If I come over here and do another one for Jeff's. Is that one that was updated to RTM, .NET RTM? I think, though, this FX migrator, migrate Blazor, is the one that they're currently working on in stream. So it's only from a couple days ago. And I think what's interesting about this one is it also, if I had a quick conversation with Jeff a while ago, and it has some logic in here that lets us, essentially lets us do, uh, have some understanding of, whether it creates an in-memory database or if it's got a connection to the Postgres one, go ahead and use that. So with that, I was trying to use that latest one to make that work. And I don't know if I can point to this one. I mean, I probably could do it locally and do a rebase up from that other one, but I'm kind of vamping a little bit until Chris gets here. Um, let's see, just check. All right, just making sure we're up and running. This is good. Go live. Cool. All right, just keeping an eye on that. Okay. Ugh. That doesn't look like it shows anywhere. Successfully connected. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you're streaming and you get some weird notes in the chat, some spam notes, and fortunately they don't go out over the air. So there's that. All right. I don't know how we would do this other than completely ripping and replacing that application. I don't want to do that. Because what I want to do, I did some work over the weekend. Here's the reason why I want to kind of drop back a little bit. I did do some work over the weekend and got some really, I think, some good progress going. And I think there's definitely some things that we can continue to build on from here. But I need to be able to get it back to a state to kind of walk you through what it was that we did. And because I think the errors when you do stuff like this are just important as the code that you create. So what if, because we're not going to do this forked from here isn't going to help us. What we're going to do is we're going to wind up taking um, this one and doing the pull request from here because it's got all of Jeff's changes in it and get that up into there. So let's do this. I don't even think I've made any commits into here. Yeah, commits go since that. Let's see. Starts activity. Yeah, I am pretty sure this is exactly the way it was. Everything I've been doing, it's been doing locally. So let's move into, let's just go into the danger zone, as they say. See, it even says danger zone. Um, let's delete this repository. Break our connection to unexpected bad things if you don't read this. So permanent delete, yes. Wikis, issues, comments, yes. Workflow runs, yep. I'm good with all that. And remove all collaborator associations, which is what I'm trying to get rid of. So cool. Back to me. Excellent. All right. So now that we've gone that far, let's do this. Let's go back to Jeff's, which he forked. Maybe that's why, because he forked it from there. So I'm going to do a fork from here. I now can do that. Yep, TagzApp is available. That's awesome. I don't want to copy the main branch. I want all the branches. And let's do this. Whoops. Let's bring this around here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is get rid of that project locally. All right. Yeah, let's do this. Here, here. Cool. All right. So let's go back up a level because this is the location where we do all of our dev code stuff. And git clone. So I know where this one came from. That's fine. No, we don't want to do that. We want to do the one from mine so that I can version it and get all of get everything the right way in there. Okay. All right, let her go. Awesome. Okay. So now we have this. I've got my application into, let's see, cd tags. We've got mine. Let's go. And then inside of here, this is everything we need. Perfect. And then we're going to do a code. Um, Yeah, let's go ahead and do a dash R. That's fine. Dash R means if I've got one already open, I'm going to reuse that instance of VS Code and just make that happen. So let's do that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so this is all here. If you happen to, I'm going to wait for all of these pieces to load up. If you happen to see what we were running through last week, we wound up running into what looked like some issues with the dev container and a different version and things of that nature. I think in my mind I kind of worked through those. So we should not run into those issues again. Some of it was the I was running into some errors that weren't necessarily dev container's fault. It's just when dev or my Docker Compose file were causing issues. So, and I can talk through some of those things we found as I went through and did it. So let's do this. We've got everything kind of up and running. It's still validating runtime. That's fine. I think we can get started. I'm. Um, I don't know what is this one. Rip that one out. Perfect. All right. So back in here, this is the one from my repository. I think we got everything set up. And I'm using the devcontainers extension. And in this, because we just pulled this from Jeff's repository, it doesn't have any of the dev container information. So we're going to reinstantiate that inside of this particular code file. Add configuration to the workspace. That's fine. We're going to use a predefined definition. So let's look for that. And if you remember, Jeff's project is using Postgres. So we're going to use the dev container template that has Postgres and two separate files for that, or two separate containers for that. And if we go out here, that takes us to that little information button, takes us to a link where we get to that container definition, information about the instantiated here. Interesting. Okay. There we go. So that's here. It talks about how we'll come back to this as we start to dive into this. But that is also possible to get from containers.dev, which is where the information about dev containers lives. So we can certainly go there and show that. So this is all the overview, the references, specification, available features. We'll touch on that in a minute as well, but also the available templates. So if I click this, you can see this is a list of templates that showed up in that dropdown that we saw in Visual Studio Code. But here's the one that we're looking at, and that takes you out to the same place that we saw back over here. So it all lines up, as they say. So let's drop this down. I'm going to grab our Postgres SQL. For right now, we're going to grab Bookworm. You'll see why in a second. That's the latest one that's popping up through the template that's available. A little foreshadowing. Let's do that. Do we want any of the components, right? So maybe we'll check and see if we have Postgres. Yeah. So the one that I've been doing and working with, it seems to at least put us in a good footing, is this one here, this feature of adding the Postgres client CLI. This one here gives me the, this what it's going to do. It's going to, I think we did this, maybe the first time we tried to do it, Chris and I tried to manually install, doing a sudo apt-get into the container. this is going to layer that in there for us kind of nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one. And I think that's the only feature that we need inside of here. So we're going to say OK. And defaults, we'll look at configuring options, sure. Options for Postgres client, yeah. So I happen to know that the Postgres version inside the container that we get is version 14. Now, we can use 13, and when I was playing around with this, it will say, hey, this, we think it'll work, but realize there's a version mismatch and there could be issues. So because of that, what I'm going to do, and when that dev container .json gets created, it includes the version number of this particular feature that we're adding. So once we add that version, we're able to, because that version is exposed to us in the dev container, we can always change it and update it, or revert back if we update it here. But let me just make sure there's no. Cool, that's what I need. All right. So we have the option to do this now, which I'm going to do because I know that that's what we need. So let's do that. Now, the feature doesn't know anything about the template I'm using, so that's why it doesn't kind of match up. But you see here, this is where it gives us that look. Can I do this? Woo! There we go. Of version 14. So that's it. So we got that in place. That all looks good. It created an initial dev container for us. I know we want the port forwardings taken care of. So we're going to uncomment that. That's Control K, Control U, which uncomment everything that's in there. I get the squiggle because I don't have a little comma here. So we'll take care of that. And then I've got 5001, which is the port of HTTPS. I've got 5000 here, which we'll go ahead and use for protocol HTTP. So in case we do HTTP traffic. And then 5432 is the port that we're opening that so we can talk to the Postgres database. Awesome. We got a good morning from our buddy Space Shot, our co-host Space Shot. Beautiful. Okay. So with that, I think I have everything. I'm going to double check one other thing. We want to include some of the customizations. So these are the things that we want to make available inside of, particularly in this case, our VS Code instance, getting the IntelliSense there around that property. And specifically, we want to include extensions. So these are the little bits of code and functionality that we can use inside of our container instance of Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code, sorry. And the important one that we want is something called, bring this back, ms.net tools.csdevkit. All right, so that's important. That gives us the C# functionality inside of Visual Studio Code so that we can continue working on Jeff's project here, essentially. And then I'm going to hold off on that change right yet. And let's see. All right, I think it's a good start there. What I also want to do is look at the, I think we're gonna, in the interest of time, we're gonna jump a little bit to something I ran into. So when we were looking at the dev container that we were going to put in place, we focused on this here, right? And we said, hey, we're going to use 801 Bookworm. Well, we can, and we can certainly load the project and get things started. The concern is, and if you may have remembered, we were trying to run through this before the holidays, there's inside of the scripts, there's a bunch of script files related to Entity Framework, and Jeff is using Entity Framework to set up his Postgres database here, essentially. And so what I'm doing is, let me just make sure there's not a way to bring Chris into this, because I'm not sure where. I made a comment. Oh, he needs a link for the room. Sorry about that. Not end stream. Is it edit? Stream is already live. Can't make any changes. Don't want to do that. Invite. Beautiful. Copy. There goes Chris. I'm going to bring Chris to the stage. Let's see. I'm going to unmute your mic.
Yeah, good morning.
Mute.
Hopefully that.
Hey.
Hear me?
I got you. Morning, Chris. How are you?
Good.
I did a little audio check when I got started, but you were able to hear and follow along kind of where we are?
Yeah. I unfortunately joined a little late, but yeah, go ahead.
All good. Welcome. Great to have you back. We'll make sure we save some time to catch up before we get out of here. So where I am is I basically took a new fork of Jeff's project. We're going through and we're putting DevContainer in there. We've got our DevContainer JSON, and one of the things that I ran into is because Jeff is using Entity Framework here, I ran into an interesting issue in that the Entity Framework, at least the latest version, when you just do a flat out install, wants 801 of the SDK, and our Bookworm version right now is just 8.0. So it'll run into an error. Visual Studio or Entity Framework doesn't even want to load essentially when we do that. So going back to, I just want to make sure we get the right version of this. Yeah, so the right version is there's a .NET devcontainers.net should be 8. I went SDK 8.101 bookworm slim AMD 64. And we'll get rid of this here because that's not the way it is. So where did all that come from? If we jump out to a quick browser session, let's see, can we do this one? Yeah, it's looking at templates we're looking at. mcr.microsoft.com. So MCR being the Microsoft artifact or container registry. We can go down and look for our .NET SDK, and that's this one here. There's preview versions for the stuff that's coming, but for everything that's kind of official and released, and then we look in here for 8.0 . And you see we get a bunch of 801 images that we're going to use. And Bookworm is the one that for the dev containers, we should be using. But then it was just a matter of picking the right one. AMD, right, AMD 64. So we're going to use that one. Okay. And feel free to hit me with questions as we go through this, because I'm kind of I'm kind of running with it as we do it as well. Other thing I will copy and paste in here, since we know if I bring this container up from this image, one of the first things I'm going to have to do to make those add migration and the Entity Framework bits work is do a .NET tools install of the Entity Framework. But I can kind of short circuit that by doing this, which gives us essentially a global sorry, what am I looking for? Basically, we'll install it for us when it instantiates that container from the image, essentially.
Yeah, it'll install it as a global tool.
Yep,
Yeah.
which makes it easy The versions will all match, so all of that is good there. We also have, and I'm going to just drop this in and explain it a little bit as we go through it, just so we don't run into the error when we get on the when we actually get into the thing, because that will require recreating of images and stuff. Once I got Entity Framework working and was able to add a migration, and we'll go through that step when we get in there. One of the things we needed to talk to have the Postgres CLI component be able to talk to the database was some locale information. So it knows kind of, I guess, what language or what, what location to be using. There is no definition inside of the container, or at least not a definition that I understood. And we can look at that. I'll show what that command looks like to show those. But so in order to get the right ones that we need to use to talk to the database, we're actually generating our own language essentially, and bringing those language components and making them available. We do the local generation command here, and then we set some environment variables that the PostgreSQL needs, the PostgreSQL CLI needs in order to be able to do its communication. So that's what all of this is there for. All of that being there also requires, let's see, also this part. So let's do this. So one other thing that we're going to add, we're going to save this, is go back into here, and under extensions, we're going to include this. Oh, I made that redundant. Sorry about that. And what this is essentially should do is put the .NET tools in the path, so it'll make it easier for us to just call out to the Entity Framework and not have to be in a certain folder or anything like that. All right. So I think that's it. So that's everything we should need to make this run. I'm just going to check my notes one more and make sure we miss anything. Did the 101, we did, okay, and the rest was the add migration. Okay, so with that, we can actually now go and do we want to reopen it in a container. We've got our dev container, we've got our Docker Compose, we've got our Docker files. All of that looks good. So let's just go ahead and do this. And of course, this will take a little bit. We'll bring up the window and we can see things roll through. If we see errors, whoa, that's not good. No such image. Well, that's going to fail. Why is there no such image? Yeah, it's fine. Let's go to edit. That should give me some warning stuff up here once it finishes. Come on. All right. All right, let me see, because I obviously copied it wrong from the cake I baked earlier. Give me a second. Let's see, Docker file. All right, let's just do this and repaste it. Boom. Oh, okay. Interesting. Paste. It doesn't say DevContainers on it. That's interesting. I mean, it certainly ran without them. Extension is probably putting whatever it needs to make it run. All right, let's.
Or do they just, or is the dev container saying like,
That's
hey,
a good question.
we're starting from the .NET SDK? because I'm not seeing DevContainers in the when I search. Anyways,
in the repository in here.
yeah.
No, but that's a good.
Oh, actually, I take it back. There's some,
A good
but
point.
I'm just taking a look around to see.
Those might be the templates.
So when I search for DevContainers, and again, I'm not saying that this is it, .NET development container images. Okay, and then which one are we using? We're using DevContainer 801 bookworm or 80 bookworm.
801, and that's the thing. There is no 801.
Yeah. Yeah, there is no 801. There's 180, which again, I'm not sure what you were looking at that earlier, and I don't know what that means. The 1-80.
Let's see. Oh yeah. Well, let's see.
So the point was that you had said earlier there was
Yeah.
some reason that you needed to get to the .NET SDK like 8.0. I haven't looked at .NET SDKs in a while, so I'm willing to bet that maybe 8.0 has been revved.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
so
been a while since I've looked.
That's okay.
So, oh yeah, 8.0.101. There you go. Okay.
Yep. 101. So that's. I'm sure I'm sure that we could probably do, version and make it a 8.0.
So the thing about it is when I follow through, I'm following through from the .NET website. I followed through to the release notes on .NET 8.0, which does show
Okay.
8.0.101, and it doesn't, and it shows the location as mcr.microsoft.com/.net/SDK. So I think you're okay. Well, you're talking about these slim ones here. There is a tag that is 8-8.0. Let's see, what does this tag look like? Oh, I'll admit I don't understand some of this. It looks like this Docker file is installing the SDK instead of it just being from an image. So that could be interesting. Like it
yeah, so it would give you like a base image of stuff, and then the .NET SDK bits would come along afterwards with the run.
Right. I don't know if you want to try that, and then if that doesn't work, we can maybe while it's building, I can show you what I'm looking at.
Yeah, let's do that. So I know this will work, or at least it seems to work as far as I was able to get it with
oh yeah
those kind of things. So let's keep this, and then I'm going to go ahead and re-kick it off, and then if you want, we can talk about the other while that builds.
I mean, as long as it finds the container, you're going to be fine.
Exactly, and I don't see any red here like we did with the last one.
It blew up more quickly last time.
Yeah, definitely.
So no, I think you're on the right track. And again, I'm a little green with, like, Docker is an interesting thing. You can learn to use it, and you can even be very effective without really getting too deeply involved in it. And then once you try to break through that little surface of, okay, let me really start to understand image files and composing, and it's like, wow, this is a big world. Compared to getting up and running very quickly, and being very happy with the results. And, like, I'm very happy with the fact that I just fire something up to have a Python container, a Go container with all the tooling, everything's there, .NET container, everything just works.
Yeah.
But then you just want to change a few things, and you go, oh, now I have to learn how this really works.
Yeah, that's kind of what's happening when, diving into this DevContainers and building your own. You actually start to have to say, okay, well, what pieces do I really need here? And, I think when we first went through, I was like, yeah, give us SQL, give us Postgres, give us, and we were checking off all these different features. And then you start to, well, looks like it's actually colliding with something else that we've got in there because it's already been installed. So, all right, let's just layer them on a little bit more slowly. But there's also the huge benefit in that I've got this other project that I'm um, a demo that I'm creating, not creating, but basically re-leveraging from a sample that's out there. And I brought down the sample, and it's like, well, it's got a dev container because it uses Python. Like, that's perfect. I can go right into the dev container. I can get um, I can get that up and running and not have to have those things on my machine. So when it's there, it's awesome.
Yeah. So I went ahead and and presented, and
Yep.
on the .NET site, when you're downloading .NET SDKs for Visual Studio, you're right. .NET 8.0 now has this
Yeah.
8.0.101 release that, I mean, these things do rev, and I just wasn't aware that had happened. And when I went through to the release notes, you end up on GitHub, and it shows further down Docker images. And so here's where I said, well, let's just go see. If I go to the SDK, what does this look like? And now we're on Docker Hub. And they're saying, okay, we've got a tag here. And then if you go and dive a little bit deeper and say, okay, you were talking about this 8.0.101 Bookworm Slim AMD 64.
Yep.
Said, okay, well, what does that Docker file look like? And you can see the Docker file is spacing it. Well, no, I mean, it's pulling. And then here's where I say, like, okay, I can sort of glean what's going on here. It looks like they are updating and installing a few things that are probably pretty important that they want to be up to date, like curl and git and so on.
Yep.
And then they're going and getting, it looks to me like they're going and getting they're just going and pulling it.
Okay.
Pulling the SDK, pulling PowerShell Global Tool, which makes sense. And so that's it. That's what makes it go. And so I think, and so it sounds like I know last week you had worked through from the very beginning. Our whole idea was, can we get the TagzApp working in a dev container as a developer? And we know for sure we needed .NET SDK, and we know for sure we needed Postgres. And it turns out there is a dev container with those two things. So can you make them all work? Because that would be kind of neat.
Yeah.
But last week you ran into some issues.
I did. And some of those issues were, I think, related to having the container created in the image there, but then making some changes to either the Docker file or the dev container file, and then things kind of getting out of sync and kind of throwing its hands up and saying, I can't continue because something's blocking my way. What has been helpful, and I didn't need to do it in this case, but in previous cases when I run into that same error, which basically is just a generic error saying that it's trying to connect. There's a lot of text for it being there, but it basically comes down to the dev container extension is trying to make a connection and mount a drive, and it's just running into an issue that it can't, and it throws the version number of the dev container. Basically, I cleared everything out, clear the containers, clear the images, and have it refresh everything from scratch. That seems to be a zero state that seems to work for, then hitting reopen in a container and everything goes beautifully. Now, we had no issues hitting this here today in doing it, but that's how I got through it. Finally got through it on Friday and then started to work through some stuff. But what we have here is we have our instance, and I don't want to run this yet because there are some setup things that we would have to do even if we were running this locally. And one of those being, if we go into the scripts file, we've got our add migration. I think if I do, I'll probably do this in two windows. So first thing I'll do is psql, right? That's our command to basically connect to Postgres. Host is going to be localhost. And that comes from, if you go back to the documentation around this template, it walks you through, hey, it's going to be accessible from this container that we're remote connected into to the other container where Postgres is over localhost, because we've opened the 5432 ports between them. I just need the username. In this case, we set it up as tags. And I also need the database, which we set up as Postgres with one S. And then that's it. Now this should give me error, connection server failed, roles tag does not exist. Okay, this is cool. Think about where we are. We've instantiated this container, but I've not done anything with it. So it doesn't really have a role, essentially.
So this is better than where we were before. It's clear that pSQL is working. It's just that what you wanted it to do didn't work.
Exactly.
It connected to localhost. It connected, and I remember last time we couldn't even figure out if the server was there.
Yeah. So based on the defaults, I think this will work. So let's see. Yes. So this is actually connected to the default instance of it. I guess it's almost like a server role or an SA account, right? We don't have a tags account created, so I can't log into that yet. But I think if I understand the commands, I could do this. Didn't find any relationships, so I don't really have any tables inside of here. And I think where I wound up going, which is kind of interesting from the in pSQL. How can I see the list of tables? So that's where we got this from, right? So that DT command will show you the list of all the tables currently selected. If you want to see tables from all schemas, oh, that's interesting. So let's try that. Boom. There you go. So that's all of the tables that are listed in there, regardless of what schema they came in from. Pretty cool. So just like that, we're able to talk to our Postgres instance. I'm going to open another bash window because what I want to do is actually get scripts. This one. Let's bring this guy up. So go into our scripts directory because that's where this is based off of. So all of the references that are here for the various source projects and starter solutions are all referenced off of the scripts folder. So instead of mapping this again in my mind, we'll just go ahead and in the interest of time, let's do this. Let's just copy, paste, although see episode 5 of the Dev Talk show for why we've got to do this. No comment?
Well, I remember back in the day when we struggled with Azure DevOps for over an hour because we weren't thinking about the container. I guess it was a container. The VM was Linux based, right?
Hey, we'll run it in Linux. It'll be quicker. Yes, and Jeff runs his script in Windows because it's command script. So forward slashes versus backslashes. So now we've got this. It's going to take a little bit of time because it's going to build the project or build the solution, see what it needs for all of the various bits, and then come back and make the updates to the database for us. Dun, dun, dun. And of course, this will take a little bit, but and I don't know if you saw, Chris, we ended up taking we originally took a fork from the repository that Jeff has on his Fritz and Friends repo or account. In talking to Jeff after that, it turns out he's been on the stream. They're working off the one on his account so that they can do a pull request into the one for the show's account. So there are a lot more updates in there. Now, I'm sure there is a way that I could have stayed where we were, and just done some kind of a rebase and pull all of that into.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things you could do. We could add another origin to the
Okay.
to the GitHub repo, that because I hear what you're saying is you're saying that we forked from a specific repo.
Yep.
And so you feel like, hey, we're not keeping up because that repo is not the latest of what they're doing on the show. That's actually a different
A different repo. Yeah.
repository. So we could add an origin to that repository. And then now you have all, and then again, this is one reason why I do like to use a visual viewer like GitKraken. And I say that in a funny way. And it doesn't have to be GitKraken. There's actually the VS Code GitLens has gotten to be pretty good. There's another one in there that's free. That's pretty good. And in the Visual Studio Viewer isn't so bad, but there are things that I really like about. I mean, as everybody knows who's watched the show, I don't get paid. I'm not supported by nothing. I pay for GitKraken Pro just because I really like the graph. I really think it's very good. And so you add another origin, you add another remote. I'm sorry, that's the term I'm trying to use. I guess it's early. It's not even Monday. And you'll see that new line of commits, and you could literally, if you just wanted to commit from over there, if you just said, hey, you know, I could rebase up to it maybe, which is something I like to do just because I am the reason that I generally like rebase, and you could do a whole show on the differences and when and where and when you should, is that it kind of makes me feel like I'm time traveling and saying, even though I started this code in the past, I want to pretend like I started it just now. How does it fit on top of the latest?
Yeah.
And so we could do that, and that way, but I think right now your goal is you don't necessarily need to keep up. We probably will when we want to submit a pull request. Right now, you just want to see it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I knew if timing had worked out, and I knew, and I had run into this, and it wasn't blocking me from doing this stuff, we'd have walked through that and done it. I ended up basically deleting the repo that was forked into my repository, because even though Jeff's repo was under his account and the other one was under the show's account, I still couldn't do a fork from Jeff because it says it already exists. I guess because it has a common history.
I'd have to see the specific issue. I think you know what I think it is? Here's what it is now you're trying to fork from GitHub, right?
Yes.
So GitHub has a rule. GitHub has a rule that you can only have one. All of your repositories have to be uniquely named for you.
Okay.
So what you're trying to do, I suspect, is you have a TagzApp repository already in your account. You've already forked from the original one that we chose. And now you're saying, well, hey, I want to fork from this one. And it's like, well, hold on a second. You already have a TagzApp. I can't do that. You could, I mean, so this is where, you know, so like I said, for as much as I use a visual tool when I'm demonstrating things, you always see me, or you often see me do something funny where I'll be in the visual tool, I'll see what I want to do, and then drop to command line to actually do it.
Yeah.
And often that's really just to stay sharp, frankly. It's not that the tooling in the tool is bad. It's just that to kind of stay sharp up here and go, well, let me go out and create a new remote manually just so that I'm remembering how to do it. And that way, when I'm sitting down at a desk or teaching somebody or showing somebody who doesn't have a fancy tool, you're not sunk. You just go to work using the command line. So I still think the trick there is you don't even have to fork. You could, we could create another remote in the same repo. And now I don't want to say connected. That's not the right term, but you now have all the access to all of the commits and pointers in both repositories at once.
Yep.
And plenty of them are going to overlap. Plenty of them will overlap, and some of them will, some of them won't.
Okay. Yeah. So you have an awareness of really the breadth of that particular project. Okay. Cool. I have to remember that, but we might come back and revisit that. So in here, we've got this error, and it's talking about there's no database provider configured for this DB context, right? It can be configured by overriding the DB configure or by using the add DB context. All of that comes from if we go into, because we're trying to create a context off of the TagzApp storage Postgres project, which is this one. And TagzApp context is the class that we're trying to create it from. So this is, I believe, what it's referencing as it goes through and tries to do this. Now, oh, there is an onConfiguring. Okay, so provider can be configured by overriding the onConfiguring method, which is what we're doing. Although I don't see a provider
So
mentioned.
when it goes to grab the connection string, do you think your connection string's correct? I mean, it might be.
Let's take a look, because we have this one has this one, which is, I guess the question is, I'm not sure which one it's using, because there's a development one as well, which has specifically TagzApp and TagzApp security. This localhost database Postgres user tags, yeah, that's a correct connection string to get to our database.
Yeah, and we created that user ID tags, that password tags.
Yeah. So what's not clear is we've got two connection strings here, but we also have this one here, and it's not clear which one it is using. I mean, either one of them would be all right, but the fact that there's two in this one, TagzApp and TagzApp security, and am I focusing on the wrong thing? So if we go back to here, configuring options. So it's asking for that particular connection string. So it's trying to go to TagzApp, which is what we want, unless it's hitting here.
I wonder if you can breakpoint that and see what it's doing.
Doesn't seem to want to let me. That's interesting. Yeah, that would have been.
Well, for one thing, there isn't a debug yet, right? Like you don't have any.
Oh, like our startup file or whatever.
Yeah.
Create a launch JSON.
Launch JSON.
Okay. I mean, that should be easy enough to do.
It'll try to create one for you. Sometimes you have to play with it.
Let's see. Oh, VS Code says.
Says nothing.
Oops. Ah, that's better. You don't have an extension for debugging C#. Really? Okay. How did that not get installed? All right. Cool. I took that and that. We'll let that run. Yeah, that's interesting. Because the reason I'm a little surprised is because we did tell our oh, well, that's not right. dash. All right, well, that's why it wasn't there. I mean, I guess it gracefully ignored it, but that's okay. Sorry, I don't have a mute button here. Ignore for now. This might be as far as we get today, getting this in there, and maybe doing it, see if we can hit the debug breakpoint. There we go. Awesome, installed. Beautiful. Back to here, TagzApp context. Boom. All right. It's got download 7 as well.
Yeah, now you got to wait for the extension to get its dependencies.
Yeah. That's interesting because 7 or the dev kit is the thing that wants .NET 7 in there, which I guess is probably what it was written on because it's been out for a while. Executable path.
Yeah, so some of the earlier issues you had last time, you said there was a bug in the DevContainer extension, and so you're using the pre-release?
I was, and I actually I've gone back and forth on it, but it was based off of an issue that I saw
Okay.
where somebody had said, "Hey, I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing it all the way up through this version. But when I get to this version, I don't. Or
Right.
going backwards, I don't see it." I've
So
had
maybe not related, like hard to say.
I've had it not be an issue with the version. Yeah, if something there's potentially there's something going on, and I haven't A/B'd my steps that I've added to the
Right.
Docker file or to the container, but either way, when I run into that, it's like about 5 or 6 lines, and it specifically calls out the version of dev container that you're running inside of there. I clear out the containers, clear out the images, and then go ahead and redo it, and it seems to be fine. One of the comments in there was that it had something to do with closing out with basically dropping the containers and recreating them. That it was getting hung up on that.
So
And I
right
don't know
now, you are not using the pre-release DevContainer extension.
if that is. Let's double check, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Yes, I am using the latest,
Right.
which is
Okay.
3.3.8.1.
Yeah, just wondering.
And
Just
I think
wondering because I'm trying to think about, if after the show today, if I say, "Hey, I want to take this code and see it all run locally," you know,
right,
um, I want the dev containers extension, but I don't necessarily need the pre-release. And like to your point, if you start having some trouble, then maybe clear the images out, clear the containers out, and see if that resolves it while they're working on whatever may be causing that.
right,
So
yeah. All right. I don't think this may or may not go. I'm trying to see if we can move things along here.
Yeah, it's hard to say if that was done, but it looks like it's. Oh, are you local again? I forget. No, I don't think so.
Nope, still in the container.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think I can run that one. See, I don't think that'll, because we're not attached to anything, any processes, so it won't hit if we run it.
No, I agree, and I feel like right now, I guess with that little swirling circle down there, I guess.
Yeah, we're still waiting.
Yeah. So.
I think, yeah. It says activating extensions now. Did. Sorry, but not done. Yeah, it's still spinning here.
Okay, so
What do you
there's
think?
definitely. Well, we don't know how long this is going to be, but definitely, we can. There's an interesting recap. Like we're already in February, and as far as me, this is the first time I've been on the air in 2024. You were on a little
Welcome.
recently. The year started out a little rough. In terms of my having a lot of, I know I especially had a lot of morning engagements, and they weren't necessarily work, just lots of different things. So there's a lot of topics on this show that we've been working through. In fact, it looks like, I don't know if you're done there. If you may have
It looks
finished.
like it might be. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, and then which do we want to
Yeah. It's like, what
use?
are we?
This one.
Okay. Yeah. So while this is building, when we look at some of the topics that we covered late last year, we spent a lot of time, obviously, with Blazor and the new Blazor and .NET 8. And then I think a little bit of a deeper dive into how do you use the authentication authorization, the identity stuff. And
Yep.
it's interesting. They've been, a lot of people have viewed those. It seems to be a topic people are looking for. Kind of taking apart that whole bit of code that you get when you create one of those projects is a challenge. And
Yeah.
it's been fun to work through, but I think there's more to do, because I'm still looking to kind of to help discover the practical path forward. You could file a new project, you could take that code in, but that doesn't help you a whole lot when you want to go make a wholesale change to it. You can just decorate it. You could just take it and say, okay, let me make it look and feel like our site, and that's how it's going to work.
Right.
But there was somebody else in one of our comments who clearly wanted to head down the same path I did, a login component, where you go on many websites where the login stuff is usually sitting in like the upper right-hand corner, and it might just say sign in, and then you'll sign in, and without anything changing on the page, it'll just show your picture or whatever now. And
Right.
and I kind of wanted to see if that was possible, but it looks like you have hit an exception here.
Yep.
But what's odd is you didn't hit your breakpoint, like it just skipped right over it, or
It looks like it did. It looks like it's trying to initialize the
because
configuration,
what I'm
which I guess
wondering
is,
is what is that? My question is, what does that connection string say? Like that's what I'm after.
yeah, and local variables are not available. Why are they not available? The exception call stack frames. Oh, beautiful. Maybe we breakpoint here and redo it.
Yeah, I suppose. And so definitely want to get back to kind of deconstructing that. And I'm trying to see if some of other folks on YouTube are looking through this. That I can let people know. And maybe in a future show, I'll try to get some links and everything up. But there's a YouTube channel called Code Wrinkles where that gentleman appears to now be attacking the authentication authorization stuff. And he started by making a video going through the pieces, the identity, that identity user state component and the revalidating component, and kind of explaining what they do, which isn't exactly the same thing that I was doing, which what I was kind of looking for is, how do I bend this code to work the way I want, versus this particular video was more of, let's understand what it does, which I think is valuable.
Right.
I think it's super valuable. Sure. So I would like to gather some of those resources for people. I don't have, wouldn't be fair for me to do it right now at 9:04, because I certainly have to wrap in a few minutes, but let's see if we can at least hit this breakpoint. Because I'm curious what the connection string says, and it looks like it's everything you expected, right?
Well, it's hitting, just to be clear, at least I think, it's hitting, where are they at? It's going with this one.
Yeah. And you're expecting that to work. Yeah. So.
I think so. DB configure TagzApp, and maybe that's where I kind of focus. So that connection should go. Although it doesn't, no, because it's going to fail because of that. The error probably is there's no role for a TagzApp, would be my guess.
Okay. Now, I thought earlier when you were working from the command line, you didn't create that role or user, and not being super familiar with Postgres.
Yeah, we didn't get that far. So what happened was the error that popped back was, it's giving us the tags does not exist.
Okay. Well, that's a good clue.
Yep. So and that makes sense. We haven't run the migrations yet. So we're kind of in this catch-22 loop. It looks like when the code goes to run, it's using the settings that are in here, as opposed to the settings that are
in development.
In this one. Yeah. Now, they are this.
Do we not have that? In Visual Studio does a pretty good job of this, and it almost does it invisibly. Mm-hmm. Is that your project settings probably are setting the environment variable in Visual Studio, but now we're in Visual Studio Code. Right. So is it just that we're not running as development?
That's what I'm thinking, is that we don't have, I guess, if we go to our program, right? We're not forcing us to be in that.
Well, let's see. I feel like there is a way to do this where I mean, I don't know if we want to set an environment variable just to see it work. I feel like there's a way to set the environment. Okay, so in launch settings.json,
which we don't have, but we could. This.
I'm sorry. Yeah, in launch settings. So I wonder, we don't have a launch settings yet. Is that right?
That's what it looks like. I mean, TagzApp does not seem to have one. I think
you created one though. Oh, maybe you didn't.
It wanted me to make it run, but
yeah. So where is that? Let's go find that. If you go to the debug tab, which I guess is that third one. I guess we have to close this. I wasn't sure. I think we have to stop running.
Okay.
Now in debug, we're not seeing. Oh, I see. So if you go to the settings cog, I think. So to the right of that, does that open it up? No. So instead of that, what if we say there's a way to open that file? And I'm just trying to remember what it is. So there isn't a launch anywhere in your project. There isn't a launch dot, just even launch.
No. Right, because it would be launch dot settings, wouldn't it? Oh, wait a minute. Launch pad.
Yeah, and so there There it is, sitting in properties. So you have a launch. Yeah. Let's try that one.
Launch demonstration. Okay.
Let's see what's that looks like.
Okay.
Now it does say ASP.NET Core environment development. So I would have expected that to be the one in control, but we're not sure that it is.
Although we've got a Docker.
And what you're saying is that the app is coded to run that migration for us on first run. Is that right?
No, that app migration has to be done beforehand.
So do you think that's still the issue? Because
I do.
Okay.
Because we've still got this. I don't know how I wound up with two of those, but I can get rid of that. So I'm not sure this is the complete fix.
Yeah.
But this here has DB context options, context object in the constructor. We're not. The error I'm seeing here is a little different than the one I saw when I was kind of running through this. But what ended up happening was, instead of leaving this to be generic, it wanted me to give it a type. Same thing with this one. Now, I think this seems a little inceptionist, right? Because options for this class, but it's this class we're running it in. So,
right.
But that's kind of what, and from what I saw in, looking through, this one doesn't have a link, but the one I pasted in the chat that we were having over the weekend does, and walks you through kind of doing that. So if I save this, there we go, and I come back down here and I rerun this. This all should be a little quicker than the last one too, because it seems to find everything it was looking for. But I'm also, while it might work, I don't think this completely solves the issue.
Well, the weird thing to me is that why would you have? I think part of our expectation is that if this works on JustStream, why do you have to add anything? But
yeah,
hard to say, right?
Yeah, no database provider has been given.
All right.
I think we have to drop back on that.
Well, I think we're close.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think we are close. Maybe
you have to get running though. At least I
same. Nope, I'm with you. Cool. Right. Well, it's good to see you do a show.
Yeah. We plan to be back later this week.
I think we're going to try and do one Thursday.
Yep, that's right.
I know I've got time. We'll do it from here at home again, and hopefully, it sounds like your early morning meeting is not going to happen, so you'll be able to join as well.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. Cool.
All right. Well, we'll let you run. Thanks everyone for joining us. Feel free to comment below if you see us in the future. We'd love to know where you're watching from and what your interest is, and if you're playing with DevContainers as well. And until then, until we do the next time, we'll see you from the Dev Talk Show.